Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
This is an ambitious question list. And please don't read my whole bio. Only my mom likes to hear that. Nobody else does.
Oh, I think it's interesting.
No, it's not.
Hey, Heather, can you hear me? Can you see me? I don't know if you're able to see me. Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello.
How are you? Nice to finally meet you like I see
Virtually.
you, rather than talking through LinkedIn.
I know. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. It sounds very interesting and definitely applicable to both of our careers in the future.
Are you all able to see the flyer? Is my screen still sharing with you all?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm trying to figure out how to do this Facebook Live before we get started here. We have a few minutes left, so hopefully I can figure this out soon.
Hey, Dr. Goldberg, I have a quick question for you. If he is there, I don't know.
Sure, of course. I like to hear myself talk.
So, I was looking through your bio, and did you ever practice as a CPA?
No, I do not have an accounting degree.
Okay, because most of the people who I know who have LLMs in tax usually started out as a CPA. So what? I mean, I'm sure you might get
Be
asked
careful,
this later.
Michael. Read my bio again. It's not an LLM in tax. It's an LLM in estate planning from University of Miami.
Oh, okay. My apologies. So you were in. Oh, okay. My sincere apologies.
I did work for the IRS for a little while.
Okay. Awesome.
So I feel like I know a lot of accounting, but I never sat for the CPA exam.
Okay. My mother actually graduated from Heckerling as well with an LLM in estate planning. So.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. So I teach in that program now.
Oh, excellent. She might have had you. It was only about 7 or 8 years ago that she got it.
I've been teaching in that program for, I think, 5 years. I teach the Introduction to Estate Planning and Probate course in the fall.
Okay. Awesome.
And I sometimes teach the Charitable Organization course in the spring.
Got you.
So, where is your mother practicing now?
Boca Raton. Sorry?
What's her name, if you don't mind me asking?
Roberta Bartley.
Okay. Is she part of a firm or have her own firm?
She just has her own firm.
Okay.
She used to work for Holland and Knight and Broad and Cassell. So.
That's two big firms. I almost did a Broad and Cassell stint myself.
Yes, I think they're Nelson Mullins now. Last time I checked, one of her good friends told her. I think they went over to Nelson Mullins as the new name. So.
Yes, they did.
The ever changing landscape of medium-sized firms. So.
It's a very interesting dynamic. You have to have the mentality to be in a big firm versus a small firm mentality. And the mid-sized firms, some of them shrink and some of them grow. I mean, Grinspoon Martyr started as a very small firm, and now it's one of the biggest firms in Florida. And it started with just a very few people, one of which was a Nova grad. Michael, will you be joining your mother, or you don't know yet?
I would prefer to do something more along corporate securities. I worked on Wall Street for a hedge fund, and I also worked for the Sembler Company in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Okay.
So I want to do something more along the lines of more business transactional. She did do a lot of real property with Tavistock back in the days when they were building Medical City in Orlando. And so like I would be interested in doing law for those type of deals, but I don't really want to do like this, you sold a
Do
house.
you have your
and
Series 7, or did you, or
I
somebody
had
else?
my Series 7 as well as my Series 56. So
Okay. Any desire to work in back office at a financial investment firm?
absolutely.
I mean, we have a lot of Nova grads that are doing their compliance officers for, a number of offices. And the nice thing is they kind of work a 9 to 5 schedule.
Hmm.
So a lot of students that have taken some of my classes are now compliance officers for, Morgan Stanley, UBS, and one of them is in Tampa.
Awesome. All right. I'll definitely reach out to you about that. Thank you so much, Dr.
I'm sorry, Heather, should I shut up? You know me. If you let me talk, I'm going to start going here.
No, go ahead. You're absolutely fine. We have about 3 more minutes until we officially start and go live. So feel free to chat amongst yourselves until we officially get started.
Now, Michael, I haven't seen you in any of my classes yet.
Oh, I'm a second semester 1L.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Yes.
You probably have my wife then. Do you have Professor Minicucci?
Yes, I do. I do have Professor Minicucci. I actually worked for Denise Prada, who's in the same family law group as her. And
Oh, okay.
I also know my mother worked with another major one of the major attorneys that works for Brinkley Morgan now. That's in that family law group.
Okay, I have a lot of former students that are at Brinkley Morgan. I send them a lot of probate litigation cases.
Awesome. Yeah. No. I like Brinkley Morgan a lot. I think
Right.
a lot of attorneys.
So you should look for my exempt organization class,
Okay.
the tax procedure class, although that hasn't been offered in a long time,
Mhm.
and then will drafting or estate planning, if you have any interest. Those might not be, but the exempt org class I think would be good for you.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Being offered this summer.
Okay. Awesome.
There's no prereq.
Summer. Thank you. I will be taking that.
Good evening, Ms. Beller. A pleasure to be presenting with you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Feller. We will get started here in about a minute or so.
Very good.
Are you still here, Chris? No, I'm on a presentation here any minute. I'm just putting my garbage can in. So have a great weekend. Thanks for your help. I'll see you Monday. Okay, I got to tell Jacqueline I need her to be available at 9 a.m. on Monday. So.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am still waiting for one more of our presenters. Oh, actually, I see her in here. Let me just give it one more moment to see if we're going to have anyone else joining us, and let me set up the Facebook live stream and we will get started in just one moment here.
Oh, the dean. Good afternoon, Dean.
Good afternoon. How is everyone?
Very well, thank you.
I'm glad to hear it. I know it's been a long week for all of us, right?
Yes, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your Friday evening to join us here. I think we are officially live on our Facebook page. So we will go ahead and get started. So again, hello everyone, good evening, and welcome to NSU Law's Real Property, Probate, and Trust Law Society's attorney panel discussion, Navigating Uncharted Territory, the Pandemic's Impact on the Practice of Law. The topic of our discussion this evening is going to be centered around the uncharted territory of practicing law during a global pandemic. We will be discussing the current challenges facing the legal community as a result of the pandemic, as well as sharing the changes, both good and bad, that have surfaced as a result. First, I ask that you all please mute yourselves if you haven't done so already, and please hold all of your questions until our question and answer session at the end. If you think of a question beforehand, please feel free to write it in the chat box, and we will get to it at the end if we don't answer it during the discussion. I will start by first introducing myself, and then introduce each panelist individually, and then we will begin our panel discussion. So my name is Heather Lee O'Keefe, and I will be moderating tonight's discussion. I'm in my third and final semester of law school at NSU. I'm greatly involved in multiple executive board positions on multiple student organizations. First, I'm the president of the Real Property, Probate, and Trust Law Society, vice president of the Transactional Law Practice Group, elections committee representative for the Student Bar Association, director of social media for the Sports and Entertainment Law Society, and I'm also the lead associate for LexisNexis on campus. I currently work as a legal assistant to the managing partner of WFP Law, which is an estate planning, business planning, and asset protection firm in Plantation, Florida. I plan to continue working there after graduating and passing the bar exam this summer. Ultimately, I would like to combine my law degree with my journalism and political science background. So my goal is to work as a full-time attorney and part-time legal commentator for a major news network. Possibly, I'd like to even host my own legal television show one day. I have worked as a television host for the Lifestyle Network. So they have two shows, Florida Food, Crawl, and Oceans, which air on South Florida Comcast channels on Wednesdays and Fridays. So if I look familiar, you may have seen me on TV. To learn more about me or to check out some of my TV episodes, you can visit my blog and website, blondebarrister.com. Now, I would like to introduce you to our fantastic panelists this evening. First, we welcome Miss Amy B. Beller, Juris Doctor with distinction from 1992 of Hofstra University School of Law. Ms. Beller is a fellow of the American College of Trust and Estate Counsel. She is a member of the Executive Committee of the Real Property, Probate, and Trust Law section of the Florida Bar, and serves as a member of the Probate Law and Procedure, Trust Law, and Probate and Trust Litigation Committees. Ms. Beller is also a member of the Palm Beach County Bar Association, the South Palm Beach County Bar Association, and the New York Bar Association's Trusts and Estates section. She is board certified in wills, trusts, and estates, and is a certified circuit civil mediator. Ms. Beller is a founding member of Beller Smith PL in Boca Raton, who focuses her practice in the areas of estate, trust, and guardianship litigation. Everyone please say hello to Ms. Amy Beller.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Next, we welcome Ms. Kimberly C. Smith. Ms. Smith is a solo practitioner, and she formed Kimberly Curry Smith, PA in 2011. Her practice areas include real property, probate, estate planning, and municipal government matters. She also has a successful title company through her law firm. Ms. Smith earned her Juris Doctor from Boston College Law School and her Bachelor of Science degree from Florida State University. She is admitted to practice law in the state of Florida. Kimberly is a member of the Real Property, Probate, and Trust Law section of the Florida Bar, where she serves as a co-vice chair for the Law School Liaison on the Law School Mentoring and Programming Committee. She is also a member of the Florida Elections Commission and the Florida Bar Grievance Committee. Ms. Smith is also a proud alum of the inaugural class of the William Reese Smith Jr. Leadership Academy, and she's a former RPPTL fellow. Everyone please say hello to Ms. Kimberly Curry Smith. And finally, we welcome Dr. Adam Scott Goldberg. Dr. Goldberg practices as a tax, probate, and estate planning attorney as a partner with the Martindale-Hubbell AV-rated firm of Revis, Hervis, and Goldberg, PA, with its main office in Weston, Florida. Dr. Goldberg is admitted to the Florida and federal bars, including the United States Supreme Court, and holds a Master of Law degree, an LLM, in estate planning, and a Doctor of Education in organizational leadership. Dr. Goldberg has authored articles and made presentations in the areas of estate planning, tax-exempt organizations, probate, tax litigation, asset protection, and planned giving. Dr. Goldberg is the past president of the West Broward Estate Planning Council, the Greater Fort Lauderdale Tax Council, and the Planned Giving Council of Broward County. Dr. Goldberg is currently serving as the chairman of the Florida Bar's Exempt Organizations Committee for the 17th straight year, and recently completed a 6-year term on the National Board of Directors for the American Lung Association. Dr. Goldberg has taught as an adjunct professor at various universities since 1999, including Nova Southeastern University. He's currently one of my professors, also at the University of Miami and Florida State University. Since 2017, Dr. Goldberg has been recognized as a Florida super lawyer in the field of tax law. This year, Dr. Goldberg expects to complete his coursework to become a Florida Fellow as recognized by the American College of Trust and Estate Council. Thank you to all of our panel members for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join our panel this evening, and thank you for all our attendees for joining us on this beautiful Friday evening. To begin our discussion, finally, I know you're all probably sick of hearing me talk and would like to hear from our panelists at this point. So let's begin. I'd like to hear from each of you on how your day-to-day practice has been affected by the current global pandemic we are facing. Ms. Beller, we can begin with you if you'd like.
Sure. The most significant upheaval, of course, was the period of time, and we had a few periods where we had to be working from home exclusively because somebody had a COVID exposure. So that, of course, raised a lot of challenges. Some people were set up for working at home. Some people weren't, and they had to get set up to work at home. There were communication issues that were resulting from that. So we instituted, on the days we were home, we instituted every morning call with my team so that we could go over what had to be accomplished that day. And we tried to keep everybody on track and moving forward with our matters. The next most significant impact was how we deal with hearings, depositions, and mediation. And of course, that most of that has switched to a video conference platform. And that's raised challenges in terms of dealing with documents, in dealing with witnesses, in dealing with people who are not tech savvy. And it's still an ongoing process that we're trying to work through.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, would you like to share a little bit on how your daily practice has been affected by the pandemic?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me. I had some similar challenges as Ms. Bella did. My biggest challenge, I would say, is I have 3 small kids. So I went from working at the office, which is shared office space with a couple of other attorneys. So I'd say immediately everybody panicked and started working from home. And then little by little, a few of us came back. We're not all in the office now. Some of us decide to work from home, and we go back and forth to the office as needed, but just to prevent there from being too many people in the office at one time. We've kind of had to have the petty cash fund go up so we can make sure everybody's got a ton of hand sanitizers and stuff like that. So whenever we have clients that come in, me particularly for closings, we have to clean up so that everybody feels comfortable. We've had to put up posters. We've implemented a couple of things. Not everybody does COVID the same way. And so we have some attorneys that do COVID one way. It drives the rest of us insane. So we actually had to institute kind of policies so that everybody in the office was comfortable. I have had clients that are not tech savvy, still want to come to the office. So we've kind of had to come up with a few just simple protocols to make sure that everybody's using hand sanitizer. I do a lot of closings. That got weird for a bit. Some lenders were okay with the electronic signatures on some of the documents, but they still required wet signatures on others. So we had clients that didn't want to come upstairs. We were taking stuff down to the parking lot for a little while. Just, it was a little weird. It settled down. We're halfway back to normal. We did have communication issues. And so we've gotten creative with working out a few of those kinks. And like I said before, I have 3 small kids. I started off with them all home. So I was preparing bail money, to be honest, to make sure my husband could come get me. If I freaked out on one of the kids, it was insanity. It was hard trying to have a professional conversation, but then everybody's kids were in the background on the Zoom and the phone call. So everybody was apologizing for their kids kind of being all over the place while they were supposed to be on Zoom school. Since then, everybody's gone back to school. They weren't doing well after a while on Zoom, and I wasn't doing well with them here on Zoom. So they're all back in school, but I'm still working from home just to kind of be fluid as things come up in school. School's not 100% comfortable, so it's a little difficult for me to leave the office and pick up somebody or let them stay home if somebody has a sneeze. So I'd say the biggest challenge for me is just kind of working from home, making sure that everything still runs smoothly and trying to adjust, I guess, my presentation for clients who some get it, some don't. And so no matter what, you still have to maintain a level of professionalism that everybody can respect and still ask for their understanding when it's not as, not as normal as it would be if I were just in the office, whenever, I'm there doing whatever needs to be done. So that's the biggest issue for me, or the 2 bigger issues for me.
Of course, thank you. Dr. Goldberg, your turn.
Thank you. First, let me thank you for the invitation to come and speak. And I don't want to repeat what my 2 distinguished colleagues have just said, so I'm going to take a more pragmatic approach. One of the first things that we had to do in our office, based on the timing of when everything happened, was some functional equipment. And what I mean by that, and I'm no fashion model, that might be you, Heather, but these are branded masks with my firm name on them. We have been giving them out for people that don't come into the office with a mask. We've been using those. So that was one of the first things that we did. From a functionality standpoint, everybody got new cameras, better cameras. Everybody got better scanners because we were going to be doing a lot more scanning. Plexiglass became a very interesting thing. We also needed to have more than one conference room. So we turned one of the offices into an additional conference room. And the reason for that was because we do a lot of exempt organization work, we had the luxury of having somebody come from the health department. And they basically told us what rules the CDC would allow us to do without getting us into trouble. And they basically said, every time you have somebody in the conference room, you've got to clean it this way and let it air dry for an hour. So we were limited on how many clients we could have come into the office at the time. The other thing was the change in law that happened on July 1st, which was regarding remote online notarization for estate planning documents. I'm sure that Attorney Smith was doing that for real estate, but we couldn't do it for estate planning until July 1st. So we immediately turned everybody into remote online notarization so that we could do that. And of course, none of our clients took us up on that. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But even though we have the technology, people weren't doing it. As the term that Attorney Smith used was a wet signature. For estate planning, we pretty much still needed wet signatures until July 1st. And then after July 1st, we could do the remote online notarizations. Other things are just simple. Clipboards, the drive-through signing. That's something new that we weren't doing before. But you have clients that are afraid to come out of the house at all, but at least that. So we almost have a drive-through through those doors right behind my office is a loading zone. And the city wouldn't let me put up a sign, but it's practically become our drive-through area. Of course, what they've said before, hand sanitizer on everybody's desk. Originally gloves and masks, now just masks. These things, which are really jar openers, but they act nice if you don't want to touch something on somebody. And then the plexiglass worked out very, very well. As Attorney Smith said, we've got signs on the floor. The front door is now locked. You can't come in. We now have a buzzer system. If you come in, you're going to get a temperature check, all of those lovely signs on the door. So it's become almost like coming into a medical clinic. But we find, at least for our clients, that they still want to come in person. And of course, Attorney Beller talked about the fact that a lot of the hearings are now done online as well, or if at all. We found such a significant increase in ex parte going so much faster in the court system. I can't imagine they're going to go back to anything else when this pandemic is over.
Thank you for sharing. Now, I have a list of student submitted questions that have been previously submitted. So I'm kind of going to run through the list, but this is a very casual conversational panel. So feel free, anyone, to answer these questions that I'll be asking. Feel free to bounce ideas off one another and just chime in whenever. So the first question that we have, it looks like most of you are in an office, but I can't tell if it's your work office or your home office. So are you primarily working from home, or are you all still working from the office, or is it a mixture of both?
So I'm in my office most days. I have 3 very loud dogs. And inevitably, when I get on a Zoom hearing or a mediation, somebody starts ringing the bell at my front gate, or a squirrel runs by and my dogs go berserk. So for me, it's very distracting. It's not professional. And so I've been in my office for all of those periods, except for the times when somebody's had a COVID exposure and we've had to do, the 10 days at home and have everybody get a negative test.
I'm in my home office right now, which is where I am primarily now. I do go into the office for closings or clients that need to come in person, or if my assistant and I just kind of have some, stack of things we need to just go through, I go in, but I'm primarily working from home.
For attorney-client privilege purposes, we have a closed network that is not accessible outside the office. The partners had a meeting and chose not to open up that network, so work still had to be done in the office. Everybody has individual offices that are at least 6 feet away from each other. Just luckily enough, it happens to be the way our building is established. And like I said, we were able to put a 3rd conference room into play. And so because of that, we have been working, I would say 95% of the time in the office. It's also, where everybody's got their scanners and their computer equipment. And much like Attorney Smith with her little ones, I have a wife who is also a law professor, and she's teaching at home. So it would be very difficult for us to find enough space at home for her to teach her class while I was trying to do something with the client. So it's worked out very well, and it makes me, I don't have any nervousness about attorney-client privilege areas, by practicing outside the office.
Great. That's a very important. I was on a panel last night that was discussing attorney-client privilege issues with Zoom and all of that going on. So it's good that you're able to stay in the office. I know at my firm, I've luckily been able to keep working out of the office as well. I think it's nice to have that, but also with COVID, keeping all those precautions in place. The next question that we have is, have you found there to be a shrinking demand or a growing demand for your services since the start of the pandemic?
I'll jump in.
At once. Oh, I'll go first this time.
Go ahead.
Demand has been incredibly high. I just saw the numbers for 2020. We had an incredible year. There's a good reason for that and a bad reason for that. The good reason for that is that starting in March, every single trade association, union, employee group, be it nurses, doctors, EMTs, teachers, sports people, all of them said, go get your affairs in order. So we had a rush of, basic wills. They weren't high end estate planning, but there was a lot of basic wills. People that never did it were finally realizing that it was time to do it. So the estate planning side was absolutely swamped. From the probate side, we were also unfortunately busy. I've seen many death certificates go across my desk with COVID-19 as one of the reasons. So unfortunately, we've had a lot of probates because of that. Luckily, after the first initial 8 weeks, especially here in Broward, the courts were able to adopt that we've been able to get things done very, very quickly. So business was up at least by 25% in my office last year. And we also do real estate. It's not my area, but people were still buying and selling property. It was surprising.
I'll jump in next, if you don't mind, Kim. I'm on the litigation side of the probate trust and guardianship arena. And my practice, my partner does do planning, and she experienced similar upsurges to what Dr. Goldberg describes. On my practice, we've also been very busy. I expected a drop off, and that drop off did not occur. Rather, people still wanted to fight with their siblings or go after the second spouse who walked away with the $5 million. So I was busy throughout the period of COVID. The mediations, as far as my mediation practice, did for a short period of time, they did kind of fall off, and then people started to get on the bandwagon with Zoom mediations. So I was at the beginning of at the head of the curve with getting myself comfortable with Zoom and being able to do a mediation, being the mediator on Zoom, using the breakout rooms effectively. And so that has continued. I think probably increased my mediation practice because of the stalling of some dispositive trials and hearings, and people deciding now would be a good time to try to settle the case. So all in all, 2020 was a good year for us business-wise as well.
I'll chime in. Same here. 2020 was pretty good for us, and 2021 started with a bang. Everything has kind of increased. The same thing Dr. Goldberg said about estate planning. People panicked, wanted to get their affairs in order. We still have people buying and selling. We had a bit of a lull. We had a lot of files coming in. Closings were a little sketchy, but they were going to close, but it was just a lot of hiccups. And then all of a sudden, the end of the year came, and poof, of course, everybody wanted to close, get everything done. And the beginning of this year has been the same. The other thing that I've done more than I was doing before are evictions. I was doing them, but they unfortunately kind of exploded as well. So I've gotten a lot more practice with evictions. Pretty much you get all the way to the judgment. You may get a writ, but nobody is effectuating those writs. So nobody's really being put out as long as they can use COVID, they use the CDC order. And then if they have the COVID declaration and they can prove that COVID is in fact the reason that they aren't able to keep up with rent, they stay in the properties, but it didn't stop landlords from wanting to try and get tenants out. So there are some tenants, of course, who are using it as an excuse, and there are others who it's legitimate, but evictions definitely picked up. And so all of my hearings for evictions, and so there's a lot more hearings for evictions because once they file the COVID declaration, they immediately get a hearing. And so all of the hearings have been on Zoom. And so that has kept me busy as well.
That's great to hear you're all staying busy and business hasn't been affected too much. I was wondering, have your marketing strategies changed at all after the pandemic? Has your strategy changed to acquire new clients? Has it been easy to find new clients? Can you speak to that effect? Don't all jump at once again.
My marketing strategy hasn't changed. I mean, to be honest, it's just me and my assistant. So, and then I have a paralegal that just kind of helps me hourly as needed. And so I need her help now since COVID started. And I've not really done anything different in marketing. I actually just been getting a lot of referrals. And so I've not really grown my marketing strategy at all. We've just kind of been taking in clients as people refer them. And that's just kind of the way I've been operating for now.
So I don't do formal marketing per se. Fortunately, we've always had enough business coming in the door that we've never really had to embark on that. But I guess a form of marketing that I do pursue and my partner Yoshi Smith pursues is that we do a lot of speaking and writing for various organizations, bars, etc. There's obviously been a big drop off in in-person presentations, but we've both still had a number of online video conference presentations. I have one coming up in February for the Nassau County Bar, which is on Long Island, on things that New York lawyers need to know about Florida trust and estates. And we've both done a couple of podcasts for ACTEC or Reptile. So it's just kind of still continued, but the format has changed a little bit.
We do have a marketing budget at my firm, and I'm embarrassed to tell you that we actually cut it for this particular year for two reasons. One, we cut it to hire another paralegal because we needed the physical help in the office. But secondly, we were turning away work. Real estate, if it was too small, we were forwarding it to some of our other attorneys we know that do that type of work. Certain probates that weren't local to our jurisdiction, Miami-Dade or Palm Beach, that we might have otherwise taken, we were forwarding to others because if we had to travel for that probate, there was some concern around the office that nobody would want to attend those hearings. So by cutting the marketing budget, it just made it a little bit easier to try and deal with the clientele that we have. Building on what both my other cohorts here said today, there we find choke points in the system somewhere. In real estate, the choke points for a while was getting condo and homeowner associations to get us information because they weren't meeting as much to approve new owners and things like that. So for a while, the probate court in Broward had a choke point that we had to get rid of. So we weren't looking, business was finding us, I'm happy to say. And so we will revisit upping our marketing budget every quarter, but we've continued to with the lower marketing budget this year. And just so that you know, it's basically 5% of the income to the firm was in the marketing budget, and that was cut down to 2.5% starting July 1st last year, and it has not been increased since. The next time my firm will consider it will be April 1st.
That's great. That leads me into my next question, actually, which is from a business standpoint, has your firm had to employ any cost-cutting measures? Dr. Goldberg, you just spoke to that a little bit. Ms. Beller, Ms. Smith, have your firms had to employ any cost-cutting measures due to the pandemic?
We have not. The only thing that we kind of cut, and it wasn't, it wasn't a monetary issue, it was a COVID issue, was, employee get-togethers and cocktail hours and things like that, which we were trying to do on a regular basis as a team building exercise, but we did not cut anything as a result of, monetary or budgetary concerns.
No, we've not cut anything either. And again, my assistant is a full-time employee, and the paralegal that helps me now, she just helps me on an as-needed basis so I can control it. And so that is easy to just take some of the load off. There's only so much I can do in a day. I'm the parent who has to pick up the kids from school. My husband works at a pharmacy, at a hospital. And so we just call him Mr. COVID. He's a zombie. And so he's anything you want to know about COVID, he's that guy. But that just kind of means that like everything kind of falls on me when it comes to just kind of getting the kids and keeping that part of our lives going. So the welcome help from the paralegal was needed. I've not cut my budget, but I have, like I said, asked her to help me on an as needed basis. So when things just get too voluminous, I can unload and she can assist, and that helps out a lot. And it actually helps me to be able to take in more work because I'm not swamped doing things that I, in all honesty, can't really bill a lot for, but still need to get done.
The only thing we cut this year was the firm retreat. It was supposed to be at the JW Marriott in Marco Island for 3 nights. That's something we do every year, so that got cut. But we did add something instead. We gave everybody a bonus, and I do mean everybody, but the bonus had to be used for some vacation time. Let me explain. We had people that weren't taking vacation time because they couldn't take a vacation. You couldn't do the traditional get on an airplane or get on a cruise ship. We insisted that people take at least 2 days for a long weekend. We ended up giving a little bit extra paid vacation time. So the people that wouldn't take a vacation, they could use their bonus on something fun, sign up for an online cooking class or something. But for those that would take a vacation, great. You had some extra money. If you were going to stay at a Hampton Inn, please stay at the Marriott or do something better. Rent a convertible car for the trip. So we did bonuses. Our concern was just the mental health of the employees. We wanted to make sure that they took some extra time off to even just veg. I, being the senior partner, I get 6 weeks paid vacation, which is kind of, I have my nose in the air, I guess, when I say that, but I'm happy to work an 80-hour work week as long as I get my week's vacation. And this year, vacation just didn't mean much. Sitting at home just wasn't the same as being on a cruise ship or, flying to Napa Valley and having a glass of wine. So we didn't cut again. So the only thing cut was the firm retreat, but we took that money and instead paid out bonuses, but they had to be used for social fun or vacation reasons.
I love that idea. I'm going to Marco Island next weekend for my birthday. So that's very interesting. That's where you go as well. I love that you mentioned the fact that mental health is very important in a firm, and also, of course, physical health with the COVID pandemic. Have any of you, I know some of you mentioned that someone in your office caught COVID and you had to take a few days off from the office, or they had to take a few days off. Have you experienced any significant delays in terms of completing legal work for clients? And if so, how did you handle that situation?
Okay, well, I had a pretty clear example of that. I had a trial scheduled for the first week of December, and the first week of November, my litigation paralegal tested positive for COVID. And she was not hospitalized, but she was pretty sick, and she was sick at home. So for the first 10 days after she got her positive test, we had to work from home, and then we all got tested. Actually, we brought in someone into the office to test everybody, and we had everybody tested here, and everybody else tested negative, which was great. But then I had to gear up for a 5-day trial in Palm Beach County here. And my paralegal was working part-time from home, but she was really feeling ill. So I brought in a contract paralegal that I knew who had excellent trial skills, and she helped to prep and do the actual trial with me. So that's how I got it covered.
We had an interesting situation. My assistant's father, my assistant's from Tortola, which is in the British Virgin Islands. Her father needed a triple bypass. The Virgin Islands was not able to handle that because the last hurricane kind of like wiped out most of their hospitals, and the ones that they have aren't capable of dealing with that. So he got flown to Puerto Rico. She was the only person in her family who could go be with him because her family was on lockdown in the British Virgin Islands, and they literally locked the island down. So nobody was able to leave except for one sister, but only for a limited amount of time. So she worked part-time for almost 2 months, I'd say, between Puerto Rico and the British Virgin Islands. So we had to like quickly get everything together so that she could get her laptop, take a phone with the phone app, take it to Puerto Rico. And she worked part-time for at least a month, I'd say, from Puerto Rico, which caused insane delays. But it was right around holiday time, right around the time COVID really got bad. So people were a little bit understanding, but it was a lot. It was seriously stressful because we had communication issues. And then when she ended up leaving to go back to BVI, she came back, of course, to the US. She'd taken like 5 COVID tests by the time she'd come back. She had to quarantine for another 14 days before she came back to the office. And so I would say on a mental health level, she was extremely happy when she came back that I gave her the flexibility to work part-time. So her pay wasn't really cut. She was able to help her dad, which meant a lot. He was able to recover. And she came back actually rejuvenated, excited, thankful. And so on a mental health, so she did well with mental health. I was a nervous wreck. But nonetheless, we made it work because we did have a lot of delays. It was just a lot, but it all balanced itself out. And so she came back negative, so I didn't have any issues with COVID. We just had an office mate have a scare. A dad and her son's school pod tested positive, and so her assistant got tested. Everybody else kind of stayed away, and everybody tested negative, and so everybody's okay. I guess that's the short end of the story. So we had one major COVID issue just in terms of my assistant not being able to travel back and forth because of the bans on the countries with traveling back and forth. And then our office mate that we work with in the office having a scare a couple weeks ago.
The only thing I can add to those is we had a weird scheduling quirk that we put into the system. We left from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock open, absent any judicial meetings, but for every person in the office every single day, because in case there was an outbreak, we wanted them to have that time to go and get a test. And we did have 2 occasions where we sent everybody. Now, being in Weston, we were very lucky. We had 4 testing sites within a 4-mile drive of the office. And somebody in the office figured out how to figure out where the line was the shortest. So we did have 2 occasions where everybody in the office had to go in their own car and get a test. But that's really the only direct COVID. It's not really a mental health story. It's just a weird scheduling quirk. And it's actually worked out very nicely. I know they do it at the law school. There's a certain time where no classes are allowed to happen. So I think we're going to try and keep that. Maybe not every day, but at least a couple of days, a couple of times a week where nobody's going to schedule any appointments if they can help it.
That's an interesting viewpoint. I like that. Now, I know some of you mentioned having your employees get tested for COVID if they'd been exposed. I know at my firm, we had a situation where someone was exposed to COVID and they had to get a negative test before they were allowed to return to the office. Are any of you requiring your employees, your paralegals, to get tested on a regular basis, or just if they've been exposed or at all?
So for me, just if they've been exposed, or in my paralegal's case, if you have symptoms. So she went to Orlando with 2 other people. She came back with what she thought was a sinus infection. It wasn't going away. She got tested. It was COVID. The other 2 people tested negative. So go figure. She was in the car with them the whole drive back. Nobody in the office tested positive, but we're not requiring regular COVID tests for people who were not exposed and people who were not symptom free. The biggest discussion we had was whether to require a COVID test for people who traveled. We haven't had too much of that. And so we've just kind of hoped that people would use their best judgment about that.
Same here. Same as Ms. Beller. Nobody's required to unless they have symptoms or they think that they've been exposed, but no regular tests are required.
This, I don't know if you can see it, and I apologize for going off screen. This is a gift card to Olive Garden, Longhorn Cheddar's, the Yard House, Bahama Breeze, or Seasons 52. For every one of my employees or staff or partners that gets the vaccine, they get one of these. So we're doing $50 gift cards plus paid time to go get your vaccine. I have been able to give away 2 of these so far. From branding purposes, you'll notice it has our logo on it, which is kind of neat. Okay. But so that's something that we've done. It's not, so this is for getting the vaccine. We are encouraging everyone to get the vaccine. The partners did not feel comfortable forcing it. So instead it's a, it's a carrot and stick.
I love that. Darden restaurants. Fun fact, my first job was working as a server at Olive Garden. So I love the Darden chain restaurants. Those are some of my favorites. I love that idea, Dr. Goldberg. Ms. Beller, Ms. Smith, are you implementing anything regarding the vaccine in your firms?
No,
No.
I got my first shot, but
Oh, that's great.
yeah, I got my first shot. Second one's in a few weeks, and I snuck in on a waiting list for a vaccine dose that was about to be chucked. And so I'm not requiring it, but like I said, my husband works at a hospital. So as I hear of availability, I let everybody in the office know. So one of my office mates is actually getting vaccinated tomorrow. And just little by little, we're all encouraging it, but I have no policy or mandate that my assistant get it. And she's so young. I don't know how I would be able to get her on a list unless it was a wait list or something because there were extra doses. But I'm aware of that list. And so whenever I hear of it, I let her know immediately as an encouragement to get it. But I will likely institute what Dr. Goldberg did and give her some kind of a carrot to just kind of stay vigilant about any availability to get the vaccine.
If
Kim,
you
I'm
hear
gonna
of it, I'll
text
take
you.
one too, Kimberly.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm going to text you my cell number. And so if you hear of availability, please text me.
No problem. I'm letting everybody know that I know wherever there looks like there's some availability or a wait list, I let them know because when I went to get mine, I thought they were going to physically throw me out. They looked at me and they said, "Are you over 65?" And I was like, no. "Are you a health worker?" And I'm like, "No, but I'm on a wait list." And I knew I was on the wait list because there were people who scheduled for the vaccine but didn't show. And so, once they pull that vaccine after so many hours, they have to trash it. So if you can figure out how to get on a wait list anywhere, that's a good way.
That's a great tip. I had a lot of trouble getting my 89-year-old dad the vaccine. He finally went to, at my insistence, he wasn't happy about it, but he went to Holiday Park and sat in line in his car and ultimately did get it. He had to wait a few hours, but he did get it.
My Chart app, for anybody who's affiliated with a hospital or their doctors or whatever, the My Chart app has seemed to be the way that everybody gets it. You sign up on the My Chart app and they whenever there's availability, you can go on and try to schedule an appointment. That's the way I've heard everybody that I know that's gotten it has used a My Chart app from whatever hospital they're affiliated with. And that's how they've gotten it without too much trouble.
Well, I have a number of clients who donate large amounts to different hospitals, and it was their assumption that their donation would get them a ticket to get the vaccine and compliment the hospitals that if they don't qualify, they ain't getting it. So I'm happy to see that, but I want the Nova Hospital to be online and get the vaccines because that might be the quickest way for some of us on this Zoom call to get it.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw an article circulating that attorneys and judges may be considered essential workers. I'm not sure if that is going through or if that will ever take effect, but I thought that was interesting. I like the fact that our legal field is considered essential.
I apologize for interrupting you. Attorney Smith, we read something that they might be considering title agents to be essential workers. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. I'm going to read up on that though, and if I can find anything about it, we can communicate offline because I could see why they would do that if they were to keep the market moving, but I hadn't seen that. But I'll look. I'm sure the teachers would be upset. I thought they were next online, but I'll look for that information though.
Okay, thank you. Our next question I have here is, do you all believe that this shift to virtual meetings, depositions, et cetera, will be a long-term change, resulting in less emphasis on a physical brick and mortar office?
I think to some extent it will be. I agree with the comment that was made that I think certainly UMC hearings run efficiently and quickly with a video platform, and it's great for me. You know, I don't have to travel to a courthouse. It's less expensive for the client. So I think it will continue to some extent. However, I do think that there is an intangible benefit in a lot of situations to in-person proceedings in terms of a litigation, depositions, hearings, and most importantly, trials. The trial I had in December had 5 lawyers involved in the trial. And there were a couple of lawyers who really fought hard to have that trial be in person, and it was in fact in person. We had some witnesses on Zoom, but the attorneys were in the courtroom with the judge and the parties. So I think that in-person proceedings in the litigation world won't go away. You may see some attorneys appearing by video conference, that kind of thing. But that's what I think is going to happen. It's going to be a hybrid.
Which
I can see it being hybrid. Oh, go ahead.
No, ladies first, by all means.
I was going to say, I think it would be hybrid as well. I can see in some circumstances where in person would be more efficient, but I think that there will maintain the practice of keeping a lot of the Zoom hearings. I mean, the hearings that I've done for evictions, at least, and other, hearings like motions and special sets that don't require lots of time, I think they would maintain on Zoom, I think at least, because you don't have to travel, potentially 2 hours to a courthouse to do a hearing for 15 or 20 minutes and then leave. So I think the judges prefer it also, because then you don't have, attorneys kind of sitting in your office or in your chambers waiting for their next turn. It just kind of frees up space and allows people to, I don't know, just kind of control their time a little bit better. So I think it would be a hybrid as well, especially for those hearings, like I said, that don't require a lot of time. I think that the courts might like to keep those on Zoom.
Right. Unlike my two counterparts, I am more of a traditional estate planning and tax attorney, and we are the tree killers. What do I mean by that? We still need the paper trail. The IRS sometimes says you must show us the original document, and we still need to, even though the court is accepting scanned copies at any point in time, I am supposed to have your wet signatures or some electronic signatures. So I still have way too many file cabinets in my office. I still keep a storage unit that's air conditioned and temperature controlled and water controlled, because we may still need those papers. So unfortunately, we're still tree killers. I don't think that's going to change too much. We've not been having a lot of luck with the remote online notarization of estate planning documents because of the additional cost. And if the clients don't understand the technology to do a Zoom call, it's very unlikely they're going to understand the technology to do a remote online notarization. So they're still going to want to come to the office. We have seen a lot of money to be made for remote notaries, which are notaries that will go to people. They're taking their life in their hands, in my opinion, but we have had a need for a lot of remote notaries, which is not the same as a remote online notarization.
Can I jump in and ask Dr. Goldberg a question?
Absolutely.
So the online e-will bills in the reptile section, that was a huge controversial thing. And so when this became effective July 1, people were, absolutely waiting with bated breath to see what was going to happen. And it was like a big thud. I agree with what Dr. Goldberg said, like basically nothing happened. And my understanding is that part of the reason for that is that Tallahassee didn't have a way to deal with the online notary stuff. So people would take the class, but they weren't getting the certificate processed. And then I think the other issue was that nobody was really providing the platform which the statute requires for maintaining the e-will. So basically, the infrastructure wasn't there. Is that your experience, Dr. Goldberg?
It was very difficult to get it approved when I went through the class. But there's two things to note. Number one is anybody that uses it, I guarantee you will be calling somebody like you because I don't trust the system.
Mm-hmm.
With Attorney Smith, I don't know if you've been doing that for real estate, but we basically had to beg our remote online notarization real estate company to apply and do the system so we at least had somebody to use because the 3 companies that were doing it weren't ready to roll on July 1st. And it's such a convoluted process. You've got to keep the video. You need 2 forms of ID. People couldn't get to their safety deposit box to get that second ID. So Attorney Beller, I think it's coming. The few that I know that have happened from some former students or attorneys I know, some of them were complete disasters. And the fact that you can't do a super durable power of attorney, or if you're doing certain things in a will, you probably shouldn't do it that way. I just think.
Or you can't do it for a vulnerable adult either.
Yeah, well, define vulnerable adult. The statute
right, exactly.
does.
I think some days I'm a vulnerable adult.
Yeah, I'm a vulnerable. I can't get a COVID vaccine. I'm vulnerable. I'm sorry. You can see that what's interesting to point here for the students, at least, is that just because the law allows us to do something doesn't mean that it's getting done or it should be done. And it's funny because my 2 cohorts here, they're in the reptile section. I'm actually more involved in the tax section, and the tax section hated that bill. But because we call ourselves the tax section, we didn't get much say in that one. So that passed. It was actually tried to be passed a year earlier as the e-will bill, and I think it's a disaster.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't have mattered if you guys got involved because the elder law section got behind it, and they basically steamrolled everybody. Yeah.
Oh boy. I agree. Nobody in, I guess nobody in my practice wanted to do it. Like Dr. Goldberg said, it was so expensive. I mean, people were silent when you recommended it to them. It just cost a lot. And then I work with the fund. And so the fund had 1 or 2 remote online notary companies that they kind of recommended you go through. But again, we couldn't convince any of our clients to want to do it. They just didn't want to pay the additional money. It was weird because it was difficult to find the remote notaries. So some of them would go to their bank. That ended up being the saving grace. People would make the appointment and go to the bank, and the bank would notarize for them. But that was the best case scenario for us. The remote online notary option was not a successful one for us either.
I see we have a few questions in the chat that I think kind of go hand in hand with this. One person asked a question for a probate panelist. How do you deal with elderly patients in nursing homes who potentially have lockdowns during the COVID pandemic with no visitors allowed? How do you deal with them?
Pick me. I want to tell this story.
Sure. How do you deal with them signing new documents or wanting to create a will or trust agreement?
All right, so just about every single nursing home, adult community, and even some of the high-end assisted living facilities went on complete lockdown. And I basically have clients in many of those, and I was at the social worker's phone line constantly every day saying, these are documents that the clients need. So every time I eventually, with threat of litigation, was able to get them to come up with a system. Usually the system was the person would come to a window somewhere. We'd have a two-way remote control, remote, either a phone or walkie-talkie. I would have to bring my own witnesses. I would have to put the documents in a sealed Ziploc bag, deliver them. Somebody at the staff would meet me at the front door, bring the documents up to the person, and they would sign them after going through my list of questions to prove consent. And the witnesses were there, and we would sign things on the car. So that wasn't even a drive-through. That was basically an at-home visit. But it's being done almost like seeing Dr. Hannibal Lecter in the movie through a plexiglass. So we've done that through screened-in patios. We've been doing that through windows. And a lot of the facilities now have actually created an area. I can tell you that the Catholic ALF in Plantation, the name is escaping me right now, I apologize, but they've actually moved somebody out of a first floor unit that was right by the entrance, and they're using that as almost like a visitation booth. The patient, the person who lives in the place comes out to the patio so we can two-way communicate. For wills and trusts, we have the constant presence test, so they have to actually be able to see the signature. So I can't do it behind a cement wall. But that's actually worked out very well. And I've been the test case in at least 7 different facilities because I've pushed. And I keep taking the social worker. I'm like, this person needs to get this done. So I just did one for the first time this week in Miami Gardens. And they told me that I was the first one. And they did it very similar to what I just described. But everyone's been different. And it has not been easy.
Wow.
Yep, I've done some in parking lots of the facilities where they wheeled the person out. And we did it in the parking lot. And I've done a couple in the lobby of the facility where they brought the person out to the lobby.
Well, that seems.
I've not had to visit any ALF or nursing home facilities since COVID. So I've not had that issue. I've just had the issue of clients that don't want to come upstairs. So we've gone downstairs and done stuff, but I've not had a client in nursing home or ALF to have that experience since COVID.
Wow. Yeah, that seems like a very intense sort of signing having to.
I've had people come to the office, but they're like double masked with gloves, the elderly clients. They'll for whatever reason, they still want to come. I encourage them to stay home, but they will come, but they're like totally, masked up, shield, gloves, the whole deal, but they've come.
Of course. Now, on that, do you all think that the COVID pandemic is going to have an everlasting impact on the reptile area of practice?
I think that if we hadn't passed e-will legislation before COVID, this would have been a good push for the people who wanted it to get it done, but it did get done. I think that as Dr. Goldberg observed and as Attorney Smith has observed, I think a lot of clients still want to come in person for whatever reason. There's, I guess it's a very personal, intimate thing to talk about your estate planning. And we do, more than other areas of the law, deal with people who are older. And so I think that as the pandemic subsides, we're going to see more and more people coming back to in-person meetings with their attorneys.
I want to comment. I think it's a generational thing. The generation that's working right now or retired right now will remember it. It will be fresh in their minds for the next few years. So if they have a legal plan or if they're thinking about it, something easily that I can go back to. But if I'm still practicing 12 and a half years from now, it'll be in the rearview mirror, and I think it will be a thing of the past. There may be some technological advances that will stay with us here, but I think it'll go back to the last study I saw is, only 30% of the population in the United States has an estate plan, and among attorneys, it's only 60%. So it might be higher now, but I expect that there'll be a fall off and back to those, allegedly normal numbers, in a few years from now.
I agree with Dr. Goldberg, but I do think the technological creativity will continue. I'll say that between texting, FaceTiming, I mean, we've done some funky stuff to try to accommodate everybody. And I think that will stay around. I think that the younger generation, they love the technology and there's constantly a way to work around. And for those people who don't mind figuring out the workarounds, those same minds are in the technology, industry, and they'll keep coming up with ways to make it work. So I do think a lot of it will stay in person. I think Dr. Goldberg is right. It's going to fall off a bit. But I do think I would say on a legislative level, there may not be any new legislation now to kind of deal with episodes like this. But I think in office, in terms of software or how you are communicating with your clients, I think that might get, I'd even say slightly edgy. I mean, just because some of the ways that we've had to try to get to clients or clients want to come to us, we've had to force them to come in to confirm they are who they are, authenticity, ID passports. I mean, everybody just wants to do this and show you over the Zoom, and it's like, okay, that's not enough. They want to take a picture and send it in. So, I mean, I think some software, authenticity software or something might be more beneficial, but I think it'll be maybe a fall off of some of it, but an uptick in some of the other parts that will be implemented as, kind of internal policies of how to get things done or work around people not being present. But some stuff will still just have to be old school and stay that way. I think Florida is Florida, and there's so many people trying to do so many different things. And there's so many fake IDs, and there's just so much that you have to keep up with that I don't think that technology is the safe way to just go forward with all of that.
So Ms. Smith, I have a follow-up question for you. I know a lot of the things we've been discussing have been more focused on estate planning, but I do have a few more real estate-based questions that I think maybe you would be the one maybe answering them, but please, Ms. Beller and Dr. Goldberg, feel free to chime in as well. A student asked a question on how the pandemic has changed the way closings happen. So if you could maybe speak to that a little bit.
I think, again, when COVID first hit, we were taking stuff outside. People's expectations of how we presented documents to them was a little weird, and just in terms of them being inflexible. And a lot of that has worn off. People are coming back to the office now. And, COVID, again, the market is what it is. People are still buying, but they're still willing to come in and sign. For me, when we schedule closings, we tell them in the email when we, confirm the appointment to bring a mask. We have them use the hand sanitizers before they come in, and they're still willing to come in. We still have a conference room. We've spaced it out. We don't serve refreshments. I literally have a bag with my firm's name on it, and I put the goodies or refreshments in it that they would normally be able to partake in, and they take it when they leave. Pins are absolute giveaways and, stuff like that. But I think that, it's not changed much, other than the one thing I thought would change more is I thought the banks would have more online signatures of packages, still understanding that they would need wet signatures. I just thought it would come with the panic, but it did not. I think we had one closing where we had like an online signature, but they still had to come in and sign the mortgage and the note and a couple of other documents, deeds, of course, things like that. So, I think it's changed a little bit, but I've not had the experience that it's changed closings so much that there's a stark difference or change in how we've proceeded, because you still need to confirm people are who they say they are when they're signing these documents. So, we've had some quirks with people being overseas. They can't get to embassies, so that's been awkward. So the kinds of notary that we've gotten they have to be translated if they're in a different language. So you have to have that additional sheet where they translate the notary. Sometimes the notary is by stamp, like an emboss, and not something that can be scanned and sent right back. So that's an issue sometimes, but it's not enough of a, what's that? What branded instrument is that?
We're going through 50 pens a week right now
Yes.
because once they touch them, we don't want it back.
Nobody wants it back.
So I just wanted to build on what you had said. My apologies.
Yes,
for
yes.
interrupting.
No, you're absolutely right. And the joke is, for anybody that does leave a pen behind, it kind of stays, and everybody tries to figure out whether they want to throw it away. And if for any reason it has to be saved, the amount of alcohol that drips off the pen and it sits and dries, I mean, it's like a thing. So you're right, the pens are gone. We've saved a lot of refreshments because people either don't want them or we don't want to give them out because we don't want to clean up behind anybody or anything like that. So it's changed a few things, but not enough, not in that industry. I think it's just too important to get the wet signatures, check IDs, confirm people are who they say they are. I think if anything, it's just people are selfish, I'll say it that way. And so getting them to do things in a way that works for you is the challenge. So for me now, it's more of like an HR thing, just learning how to communicate with clients to get them to kind of do things in the way that you want them to do it and feel safe and comfortable at the same time. So that's been a bit of a challenge because not everybody's receptive. Some people come in, they might have a mask on and it's kind of like, whoa. And I think people are going to be paranoid for a long time. So even with the vaccines coming out, I think everybody's going to want the mask. We too have extra masks to give out to people when they come.
Can I add one thing?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm going to stand up for a second here. You will see I am wearing short sleeves and no tie and no jacket. What the pandemic has done is it has turned me into a custodian as soon as the client leaves the office. So I am wiping down chairs. I am glass, we have a glass countertop. We're cleaning everything. So it just wasn't functional to be doing that in a suit and tie. So we've certainly brought up the casual level of in the office. And it's funny because I still find myself telling the clients when I make the appointment, just kind of want to give you a heads up. We're going to be a little casual, because for 20 years, my firm was always suit and tie just about every day. So that's been something that may stick around too, because the clients aren't turned off by it.
Right.
One of the things, Attorney Smith said that's a big deal was we used to always like to serve coffee in fine china, and here's a box of teas and take the tea that you like. And Thursday was bagel day. Monday might be tea and crumpets. And we cut all of that out, So one of the fun things that you can do in the office, or a fun thing you can offer for some of your clients. So those are two things that that I've seen change.
I'll say internal judgment in the office has changed because for those people who don't clean up the way you clean up when a client leaves, gets the permanent side eye for like the rest of the week. Because they're now judged because I'll bring Lysol from home and spray and the alcohol wipes and the cleaning, and everybody knows I've cleaned because if you touch a doorknob after me, it's soaking wet. So if anybody leaves to go to the bathroom in the middle of me cleaning, it's like, Kim must have just been here. Right, it's turned into that. And so for those people who aren't cleaning like that, it's weird to watch other attorneys not want to deal with other attorneys because they're now judged about the way they clean up behind themselves or their clients when they're in the office and sharing space with other people.
That's great. Thank you both for sharing that. I see we have about 15 to 20 minutes left of our meeting, so I would like to open up the floor for students to ask questions. So students, to keep it kind of organized here, if you have a question, please write it in the chat and then we can go in order. So I see the first person to ask a question was Lucas. Lucas, if you'd like to read your question out loud, or I can read it for you.
Sure. Hi, Heather. Thank you. My question, let me get to it real quick. I apologize. Have any changes in court procedure due to COVID affected court selectivity of cases? Mainly what actions necessarily can or cannot be brought before courts?
So I think Ms. Smith talked about the eviction proceedings, and that was a big one. That's the only, well, I shouldn't say that. So I had a guardianship proceeding filed in Broward County, maybe the first or second week of March. It was right before COVID hit, and that sat. And our incapacity hearing was last week because the court took the position that the statute requires the examining committee who goes out and evaluates the alleged incapacitated person to do that in person, and that couldn't happen. So unless there was an emergency and there was a need for an emergency temporary guardian, the courts simply put those on hold. So that lady's guardianship sat for 9 months.
Thank you, Ms. Beller. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll add something real quick. I have found that courts are more likely to do things on ex parte that they weren't doing before. Normally, you weren't allowed to close a file on ex parte. The judges just wouldn't let you do that in probate. But now they are letting you do that on ex parte because it's the fastest, the most efficient, not only for us, but also for the court. But there is also a lack of communication. Dade County has been changing their probate system and what forms are required constantly since August. And it's very difficult to get somebody to communicate with you. So you get a very cryptic text message from the court, and it's hard to call and follow up with it right now.
Thank you.
To piggyback on Dr. Goldberg, the Miami-Dade probate is
Brutal.
it hurts right now to try to figure out what they want, what they don't want. I think some judges are disposing of cases a little faster because you're filing things, and they've started putting in a lot of procedures about how they want things filed. So they're changing things and being very specific about what they want and how they want it. And in some cases, I think it's going faster. I will say that there are potentially more court cases for things like eviction. I also sit as counsel for the City of Miami Unsafe Structures Board. It's really interesting to watch attorneys try to get buildings demolished, but they can't get permits because a lot of the tenants now are like professional squatters. Because of COVID, they won't leave. And so to get them to leave, a lot of times it's not just about an eviction. You can't even get things done because they've barricaded themselves, and the police officers won't help. And they too have their own rules about how they're handling things in COVID. So you have to go back to court to try to get a judge to give you an order that normally kind of wouldn't be the case because the police have their own guards up. And so, well, I think things may be moving faster for me sometimes on probate. They have gotten more cumbersome, but other things are requiring more hearings since COVID because you kind of are stuck and you're begging the judge to make an order or to help you move things along.
Right. So the situation brings about a double-edged sword, I guess, in other words.
I think.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Smith.
Thank you for the question, Lucas. The next person to direct message me with a question was Michael Bartley. Michael, if you'd like to state your question, or I can read it for you if you prefer.
So my question really is, recently I was assisting a probate attorney, and we were doing the remote online notarization and one of the trustees lives in Italy, and Stiffle, I can never do it right. Stiffle came back to us, and they were not okay with that. They would not accept the remote online notarization from Italy. And I know the FINRA and the SEC might not be too happy about that, but they straight up, they did not want to do it. And they ended up dropping a client with 50 million plus liquid assets from their investment management group. So I've been wondering, have you guys seen any kickback from the investment managers for high net worth trust clients?
I
I'll go
haven't
first.
had that issue come up. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Goldberg.
No, Amy, go ahead first. I mean, this
Yeah,
Attorney Keller.
I haven't had that issue come up. I think that the e-will statute doesn't allow for the testator to be abroad, if I'm not mistaken. So, but I haven't had the issue come up under the regular e-notarization provisions.
What we have found in my office is when we need something and it's going to be done either remote or at the consulate's office, we try and get something in writing from the party in advance saying that they're going to approve that. We had a Hillsborough County probate where a particular person was supposed to be coming back to the States and they couldn't. They needed a notarized signature. We filed a motion for instruction, explained, and the judge was reasonable. And the judge said, okay, I understand the situation. If you get party A, B, and C to say we can accept it without a notarization, we can skip that portion. But it was a lot of extra work to do it. In terms of, I have had trouble. I'm glad that some of my cohorts have not, but I've had trouble with banks not wanting to notarize things right now, especially in more advanced documents. I mean, if you run in there with maybe one document, but if you walked in there with, an irrevocable trust, a revocable trust, a declaration of domicile, a living will, a power of attorney, and heaven forbid for it be for a husband and a wife, a lot of them aren't doing it. So, and then they'll take it to like a UPS store or a FedEx store where they'll get it notarized, but there's no witnesses on it. So we have seen those things happening. We have, for the most part, been able to do workarounds, but we try and do a workaround in advance so that we know what we're going to do will work. But like you said, people still change their mind. We work a lot with Morgan Stanley clients, and I hate to pick on an example, but they've been pretty good about letting us know exactly what they're going to accept and whether or not electronic signatures and whether or not a notary from outside the country or something will work. The problem really for us has been in South America. In South America right now and in Central America, it's been really hard to get anything at the consulate's office. We used to be able to get stuff done in Colombia very easily, and we're very cooperative right now. They're not booking a lot of appointments, and they've gotten really strict. So here in Weston, we have a lot of clients, Venezuela, Colombia, and Brazil. So those three countries we know a lot of, and it's been practically nothing because it's just impossible to get things into the consulate's office.
Thank you very much.
Great question, Michael. Heather was the next one to have a question. Heather, do you want to go ahead and present your questions?
Hi. So I have a couple questions more related to litigation. Maybe Amy, you can speak to this. Have you guys had any issues with like jurisdictional issues as far as, I know sometimes when you have a respondent or even petitioner where they're in another state or they're not local and the civil procedure requires them to come to participate for a deposition or trials or hearings. How are the courts handling that now that we really can't travel, or how are they handling that?
It's all happening via video conference, mostly Zoom. So I think that there's administrative orders. There's probably there may be orders that came down from the Florida Supreme Court, but all of that is happening via Zoom. So for example, this week I did a deposition of a guy. He's a party witness. Under normal circumstances, he would have to be here. He lives in Bermuda and he can't travel here, and his deposition was done via Zoom while he was in Bermuda. The challenge from my perspective is, that was a deposition with 55 documents that I needed him to look at. So we had to plan ahead and get him those documents in advance so that he would have them available, which as a litigator wasn't really my preference, because now he's tipped off ahead of time what documents I'm going to be asking him about, but there was nothing I could do about it. The only other way to deal with it was to not provide the documents in advance, but rely on his ability to either access them, at the time of the deposition if I sent him a link, or do a screen share. But I don't like the screen share. It sometimes, especially with, estate planning documents or bank account statements, the print is small and it's then you have to enlarge it and whatever. I find that a lot of people want the actual paper to deal with. And so, that's just been something we've had to accept.
Yeah, I can definitely see that being a challenge. I know that Ms. Smith, you had mentioned something about the courts and the judges kind of embracing the Zoom. I'm just curious if you notice sometimes just generationally. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of younger judges on the bench, and then we still have some of the older generation of judges. Do you guys, generally speaking, either Amy or Ms. Smith, do you see a difference where there might be some pushback from the older generation of judges as opposed to the younger judges, or you just think across the board they're embracing this?
All the judges that I've been dealing with, no matter their age, have become adept at Zoom. And to the extent that they may not be comfortable with it, their judicial assistants or their clerks help them.
I'll agree. I've not had any experience that any one generation or age group seems to be adverse to it. The only thing that I've experienced is that I with the older judges, for the most part, there is still an expectation that there's a professionalism on Zoom. Being just kind of too comfortable, too loosey-goosey, I've seen them kind of react to it, not in words, but their demeanor or their posture may change. You can see them getting a little irritated if it's just too much going on. So if you're going to do it, try to be in a still space without a whole lot going on, have your stuff together. And I've not seen any issues, but I've been on hearings like this where there's like literally 10 participants and everybody's waiting for their turn to be heard by the judge. And if there's just kind of too much going on, or, it's just not as professional as it would be, they'll either say something or they'll do a look that lets you know that whatever you're doing needs to stop and just kind of get focused again. I've had that happen a couple times, but other than that, not really.
Thank you. That actually just kind of transitions to my last quick question. I'm just curious if you guys have experienced, Dr. Goldberg, I'm not sure how much you deal with like an opposing counsel, but have you noticed a change in like the courtroom, like decorum or like the interactions with opposing counsel? I feel like, with Zoom and these conference calls, you can kind of hide behind a screen and maybe get a little bit more comfortable, whether it's being more lax or more comfortable with, I hate to say this, but, just not being very professional with your opposing counsel in what you're saying. I don't know if you've experienced any of that as far as just dealing with opposing counsel and either the decorum in the courtroom or just in your general dealings with mediations, things of that nature. Nothing has changed drastically, I guess, is just curious.
I've done a lot more communications with opposing counsel before the hearings. I'll say that much. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to get on the Zoom and do a whole lot of, have a lot of contention in the interaction. So at least for me, opposing counsel and I, we've done a lot of emailing or phone, where you used to just kind of say, well, look, I'll just see you when we get there. We've, swapped a couple of emails, tried to make it work, but it didn't work. Who cares? We're going to have a hearing. I think now there's a little bit more communication to try to make things make more sense before you get on the Zoom hearing, so that it is more efficient. That's been my experience.
Thank you.
I had I do only litigation if it involves a charitable organization. And so I did have a hearing in front of a Broward County probate judge who thanked opposing counsel for getting dressed up for court properly. He was in his workout clothes and the judge did not appreciate that.
Hmm.
Rightfully so.
Have you seen that as kind of an ongoing issue? I mean, it seems unbelievable that an attorney would even do that, but I've seen horror stories online where people show up in, workout clothes, or they stand up and they're not wearing pants or something. It seems like it's out of a movie scene, but it really happened. So do anyone else have experiences like that to speak to?
I haven't seen that, but I did see somebody's two dogs become amorous with each other in the background of their Zoom screen.
Oh my goodness. Miss Smith, have you experienced anything crazy? Any fun stories to share?
No, I mean, to be honest, my only crazy stories are my kids. So, you know, I try to let them know that a closed door or, you know, a hand up means don't come in here. I've not had it during a court hearing, but I've had it during other important Zoom meetings, and you'll see a head kind of pop over from this side. I've even had them trying to sign language to me what they want from me as I'm still telling them, no, get out. So I've had my own issues with hearings where I'll have a kid trying to, you know, sign a video game or a TV show or Pokemon or whatever it is that they're doing. And it's those have been my experiences. I've not had anybody else and it's usually dogs or kids, but I've not had an experience where anybody's been like angry or annoyed. It's just kind of is, as long as it's like quick, you know, it'll happen, and then you kind of shove everybody out of the way and everybody moves on. I've had that happen quite often with myself or other people, but like I said, since my kids have gone back to school, I've not had those issues.
Or for fear of sounding like I'm back in college with a roommate, we did have one of our providers provide us with these,
I like that.
which to put on your door. So there's one on my door now, but this is an extra one. So
I like that.
not that everybody listens to it, but at least it's something on the door better than a sock or something that says don't come in here.
Funny.
You need like one of those red light that's like, what is it like when it's like filming in session?
Yes.
You need like a red light.
This is what we use. I don't know if you can see it, but it says meeting in progress, and we have it on the door when we need it.
We've had those on the conference room in the office. Yeah, that too. Yep.
Great. I love that. I see Ashley has a question. Ashley, feel free to speak up, or I can read it for you if you prefer.
Sure. My question is in regards to the influx of clients wanting to go ahead and get their affairs in order in regard to estate planning. Have you seen kind of a shift in the areas that clients want to give or donate to with their planning? Are they shifting more towards medical or anything like that?
I wish that was true, Ashley. I've seen the opposite. Right now, clients are less charitable. They're more concerned about having money to take care of things. They're worried about health insurance, so they're keeping the money a little closer to the vest. It's easier to get clients to do a planned gift, which means when I die, they'll get something, but we're not seeing as much active charitable giving. Most of the big charities are down, unless you're a hospital or a health-related organization. Cleveland Clinic apparently is doing very well. Holy Cross is doing very well with what they would call their planned giving programs. So it just depends on the charity, but I have seen clients are not as open to charitable deductions, but because of the new tax laws that went into effect, you know, a little over a year ago, I can't tell you definitively that it's COVID. It might be that you can't take a tax deduction the same way that you used to, but at least that's what I'm seeing. I'd be curious, Attorney Beller, I know you said you have another estate, you have a real attorney who does a lot of estate planning on your side. Have they spoken about that at all?
I haven't asked her specifically about, charitable devices, so I can't really answer the question. I know I do have a post-pandemic charitable pledge case to a hospital in New York that the estate is refusing to pay $3.6 million pledge.
Wow.
And so you would think, and it's a very, very large estate. So it's not that the money's not there, but you would think because of all the good work that hospital is doing now, there might be a reluctance to engage in litigation with them over a signed pledge agreement, but we're litigating.
Thank you.
We're getting close to time here. Thank you everyone for participating. If the attorneys, if you would all like to put your contact information in the chat box or say it out loud for those watching on Facebook Live, if anyone has any further questions and would like to reach out to you. Ms. Beller, if you'd like to go first.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The best way to reach me is email, and my email address is abeller, that's ABELLER, @bellersmith.com.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, would you be comfortable sharing your contact information if anyone has any further questions for you? Or Dr. Goldberg, either of you?
No issues. I think I just put mine in the chat. Definitely email for me and no issues with anybody contacting me.
Okay, for anyone who can't see the chat, Ms. Smith's email is kcs@kcssmithlaw.com.
It's KC Smith. It's not KCS Smith. People make that mistake and add an extra S. So
Oh,
it's just
I was reading off of the chat. I'm sorry. Okay, kc@kcsmithlaw.com.
yes.
Okay, perfect.
And I put mine in the box, but it's adam@rhglegal.com. I have a Nova one also. I think it's adamgold@nova.edu. You can see how often I check it. So, and when campus starts back up, you can come see me at usually Wednesday or Thursday nights somewhere in the building, or look for my wife, Professor Minicucci, and reach out to her. She'll know how to find me.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone who attended, and thank you to everyone who participated this evening. Again, on behalf of myself, RPPTLS, and NSU Law, I would like to say thank you so much to all of our wonderful panelists for taking the time out of your very busy schedules on a Friday evening, nonetheless, to join our panel tonight. So thank you so much. Take care and have a great evening, everyone. Happy Friday.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck this semester.
Good night.